Good evening. How are we all tonight? Let me know if you can hear me. It's been a while. It looks like the microphone is working properly. OBS hasn't changed it on me. Uh, yep, that's in order. How are we doing? Everybody having a good old time? It's been a little bit, I must confess. I have. I have been on a fantastic journey. Actually, it wasn't that fantastic of a journey, but it was a journey. So if you were familiar with the previous stream, prior about a month ago where I explained why we were going on hiatus, I had to have a semi minor, major ish kind of surgery done, which I did about 2 weeks ago now. Just a little week and a half, really, in order to have what turned out to be an aneurysm removed from my left arm. This was a pretty long and involved process. I spent a lot of time in pain trying to get this sorted out for the month or so, month and a half or so it turned out to take. And that's done. I have spent the better part of the last week and a half recovering, and I am pretty much over the hump of pain. But I'm now on to the stage of itchiness, which no one talks about when they talk about surgical recovery, is how itchy healing is. So, armed with some Benadryl and some cortisone cream, I am here tonight to talk to all of you again. How are you? It's been a lot. Has anything happened while I was gone? Anyone paying attention? Yeah, just kidding. I was paying attention, unfortunately. So, before we get into this proper, and this won't be a very long stream tonight because I'm not able to sit up as long as I would like. Part of the surgery was having a vein in my leg removed to repair parts of my arm. So there were two large incisions done. Uh, it turned out to be a little bit more complicated. They could not do it laparoscopically and had to go in the old fashioned way. So I am kind of jagged looking at the moment. That's why you get the old fashioned picture of me. But it has limited my ability to sit for long periods of time. So this won't be too long. So we have not been idle over this last month. We have been thinking and talking and with one another, me and Hetman, and we have been sort of navigating a way forward. Um, we've hit, I think, a plateau of growth as streaming, merely streaming, and we have really bounced around the idea of prepared content for far too long. So what we have begun to do is we're writing and working through uh, that particular problem, and we're bringing you something hopefully by the beginning of November. I think is going to be something really special. Uh, Hetman, as I said last time, is working on applying for a PhD program, and as part of that, he went over a lot of his master's work again, and he had me help him read through some parts and edit and English language stuff that I'm usually pretty good at. Um, Although I'm not sure how good a job I did when I was stoned during the previous month on painkillers. Nevertheless, we looked at it and we realized that the depth of material that he had saved from the SBU archives in Cherniv is pretty significant. We have a lot of case files of uh, individuals from the region he was studying, who I think are illustrative. And we sort of wanted to talk about the structure and what does occupation look like. And so I think we have a format that's going to be really compelling for you as viewers to kind of look at this. And the reason, and I'll be honest, the reason that I have embraced this project above all others that keep bouncing around in my head is because I feel the need now. We see this will they won't they relationship with the military in Chicago and now Portland, and we see people in other places like less advertised, but I've been hearing reports of ICE raids in a lot of different places. Littler places, Elgin, Joliet, speaking around home in Illinois and here in Colorado and elsewhere. And I think it's important to understand and feel those things and know about those things and contextualize those things. And there's a second aspect to this that really kind of crystallized for me the week after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And let's get this out of the way before some conservative happens across this and tries to cancel us. No, I don't think it was a good thing that a young man was shot and his children are now devoid of a father. I think that's tragic. I don't think Charlie Kirk was a good man. I think Charlie Kirk very much contributed to his own death by creating an environment of hate, an environment where people are afraid, an environment where people feel that they have no recourse but violence. And that, I think, is a valid thing to say, and I'll stand by that. But something occurred to me. We don't have a real set of opposing viewpoints in this country. We really have some pretty milquetoast viewpoints and the far right. And a lot of people, far right looking or far left looking, and I use the phrase looking very specifically, aren't right or left, but what they are is resentful, and they're unequipped to look at the world in complex and deep ways. And so they tend to engage in hyperbole and destructive views on each other and what happens when we come out of this. And one of the things that really struck me as I was going through Hetman's paper, it's his master's thesis, is the nature of what happens after all of this. Like, we're sitting here and it's scary and it's a fascist system, and we are living in a time where it doesn't feel necessarily like what will come from the other side of this is good, and that's probably correct. But I am reminded of all across Europe and Nazi-occupied Europe, people had to live sometimes for half a decade under the occupation of the Germans and the odious systems that they put in place, much like the odious systems Trump put in place, that we have spent the last 10 months living, give or take. It's 10 months tomorrow or the next day. It's almost October, right? Don't mind me. But that we have spent the better part of 9 and 3/5 to 4/5 of a year living under. So it becomes easy, I think, to cast blame and aspersions, and I've seen it. I've seen it with you guys. I haven't been totally absent. I've been watching. I've been seeing you all talking, all of your fears. I feel too. But I see it. There's this vein that runs through us, and the message I want to send is: people make these choices to survive at the end of the day. And it's important to make those choices. And what does that look like? And it might take you to terrible places. But there is going to be another side of this. And when it comes, we have to be ready to be the ones who are ready to do what's right, to know, to be able to tell the difference between what needs punishment and what needs salvation and what needs grace. And I think it's imperative to start talking about that now more than anything, because I see it. I see some of you in the cathedral very angry, very ready to be absolutist, very ready to want to burn things that will never burn down. And you will never be satisfied with that. And you'll never be able to work towards that. And you'll never see progress if you don't look at the world as it is rather than what it should be. And so what we are doing is we are talking about a particular city in Ukraine that was occupied by the Nazis. Very early on, obviously Ukraine fell rather quickly to the German forces and was occupied for years. And we know a lot about what the people of those cities did. So we're going to take their stories and we're going to present those stories to you so that you can see that it's not so clear cut. I hate the phrase, you scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds, because systems don't necessarily tell the whole story. Belief doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. And sometimes getting through to the next day tells the whole story. You'll find out the city. It'll be fun, Karasu. So that's where that is headed. Um, so we're going to be doing, I think, fewer streams. I'll still be aiming for about one a week. Me personally, I don't know with the way Hetman is taking on scheduling what he's going to be able to do live with me, but you will still be getting me, Daedalus, and we'll still be talking about things, and we'll still be reacting to things and building understanding of historiography and understanding of. I feel compelled to start pushing out and talking a little bit more about my particular belief system and how it sustains me in these kinds of times. Because as I was telling some people, I recently had to switch therapist, and I had to do the whole onboarding session, 1 hour, tell them how your life went. And like therapy is a really interesting thing in a lot of ways. But like one of the things I realized very quickly is Jesus Christ, it's been a lot. Jesus Christ, it's been a lot. And kind of how you the thing we have to start talking about is how to maintain humanity in a world that does not reward humanity. Uh, I find it very ironic that people don't want to talk about Marx, because this is at fundamental level what Marx is talking about, that systems alienate us from the means of production, from our work and these things that make us human, and we are isolated from the very connections that we require to be healthy and sustained and live good lives, and that liberation can only occur when we reconnect with those things. And it's time to start talking about that. If you see my Discord profile and you pop open my section, it's a very simple quote I have from the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran, and it reads, "Yesterday, let me make sure I quote this right. Yesterday we obeyed kings and bent our necks before emperors, but today we kneel only to truth, follow only beauty, and obey only love." And that's from a book called Visions, and it was Gibran's attempt to find a somewhat ecumenical humanism. It's a great book. You probably can get it free online. You should read it. You should also read his collection of poems called The Prophet. It's good stuff. But we're going to try to talk about this. And me and Hetman had this conversation as we were doing our planning session for the video just yesterday. We're going to try to start talking about these things in terms that make them real and relatable and human, because that is the only real way to get through this. Like there's a reason, and it has nothing to do with liberal professors or Marxist professors, that conservatives hate college. Conservatives hate college because you go to a college and suddenly you leave the cradle and you leave all the ideas behind that you were raised with, and you are forced to confront other people's ideas. And you're forced to confront other people as people, and not just as some mysterious other. A black person is much harder to be racist against if you see them as a person just trying to live in the same world you are. Same for a trans person or a queer person or anyone. It becomes much harder the more we are exposed to one another to hate. And with that, I think it's important to talk about, however risky it might be, Charlie Kirk. And to do that, I want to go back to something that happened much, much longer ago. There was a man living in Wichita, Kansas. His name was George Tiller. And but for a a horrible tragedy, and the attention of the Republican Party and people like Bill O'Reilly, we would probably never know about him, and he would probably be alive right now. And George Tiller was a man who provided late-term abortions, which were legal under Kansas law at that time, and he was vilified extensively by congressmen. He was the subject of something like 30 or 28 segments on Bill O'Reilly's Demagogue show that was back on Fox News at that time, where Bill O'Reilly would refer to him by the same name they give him in Congress of George Tiller, the baby killer, and he would say things like there was a factory of death, and eventually he was shot coming out of church by an anti-abortion terrorist. It says extremist when you read the Wikipedia article, but he was a terrorist. It's that simple. What happened to George Tiller was something that we call stochastic terrorism. And what this is a exploitation of the First Amendment and how it works in order to spread fear and divisiveness and panic about a thing, be it a person or a broad category of people, and to create an atmosphere where you feel empowered to harm that thing or that person because you have been presented with the evidence of them being, quote unquote, evil. And this has been something that has ran through conservative thought for now quite some time. It's been a slow building steam where they speak horrific things about people, and they disguise debate and tactics of civility in order to spread lies and slanders and falsehoods, and they try to present themselves in a battle of civilizations. How many times have we heard that outright from figures like What If Altist, and then even now more so from the Matt Walshes and the late Charlie Kirks and all the rest of them, and the Ben Shapiros, the survival of Western civilization or Judeo-Christian civilization. People are created an atmosphere of fear, and they act on that fear because eventually, if you feel like you have no power, the outlet that people might choose suddenly becomes violence. And it's not a good outlet. And so we have seen this over and over again, a rising tide of right-wing terror over the last 30 years. That's only recently started to make its way over to people that you can broadly describe as the left in any significant fashion. And that, I mean, like the last year, very recently. And there was something that broke in us when Charlie Kirk was killed. A lot of people were justifiably horrified by what happened. It was visceral when you look at the footage, right? Horrific. Most Americans don't see something like that ever in their lives. And now it was just there right in front of your face. But there was something else I think that happened. Charlie Kirk was as much a architect of that kind of world of spreading fear and terror and panic and making you hate black people and making you fear the black pilot, for example, or gay people or trans people, as anyone. And the moment was just random. The person was just random. They came out, they shot him, and they ran. And that was that. Right in broad daylight, in a crowd of people, just shot him, and that was that. And all of a sudden, all of this that they have been fomenting from the Pulse nightclub and George Tiller and all of these events that we have like looked on in horror for decades at, it suddenly came crashing down for so many on the right that this thing that they have made cannot be controlled. That fear is contagious. That isolation is contagious. That it can come for them too, and they have reacted to this in a horrifying way. There are moves by the Trump administration to basically, essentially call basic protest Antifa activity and to crack down upon it. They are using Charlie Kirk's death as an excuse to try to further their own ends of suppressing free speech. And there's a real problem here because we failed to stop Donald Trump. We failed to prosecute him effectively. We failed to put him behind bars. And Donald Trump turned around and pardoned those January 6 people like that. And all of a sudden, there's no credible deterrent. There's no way a Democrat can get up and say, look, FBI, look, ICE, look, National Guard. Donald Trump is telling you to violate your oath to the Constitution. You have an obligation to stand down. It's going to cost you. He's going to arrest you. He's going to throw you in jail. But when this is over, we will have your back. They can't say that, right? Because we know they won't have their backs. They know they won't have their backs. And so they know that Donald Trump won't be punished because we've seen it before. Because the Democrats don't have the balls for this. They know that if they stick their necks out for the American people, they will lose everything. And why would you do that? Why would you do that inside a system where you are not rewarded for it and where you will be destroyed for it? So we are really on our own. And that is, I think, a sobering thought. We don't know how this is going to turn out. I see signs that worry me, but I have to remember that even if I am afraid, that doesn't mean my fears are valid. So really, this is really all I have for you for tonight. I don't have that long to sit up still. I'm going to have a lot more for you next week. I'm getting stronger all the time, better at sitting up, all of that jazz. It's a good time. But for the moment, I want you to keep in mind to keep connection with one another. Don't do anything stupid. There's nothing that you can do to them that will justify the loss of the connection you have with others. Oh, Jemp, you're much more cynical than I am. But the first thing we have to start remembering is that they want us to not be connected. So that's the first place you start. You reach out to the people around you and you stay connected. You stay human in the face of all of the inhumanity of the systems you live in. And this is going to be a hard thing. I won't pretend for a moment it's not. But that is what we have to do. Anyway, I want to thank everyone who's come out tonight. Like the stream. Next week, we will have a plan for a revamped Patreon. And we're going to start doing some small media projects you'll be enjoying. I think we're going to do a lot more media stuff too and start relating it back to history because that's fun and clickbaity. And it will probably get views. Everyone have a good night. Stay safe and please stay connected.
For God, and you believe it's right to risk your home, your life, to face the evil night. But in the darkest night, when our children are asleep, I think about the families of our enemies. feel the same, believe in their own truth. They must love the children as fiercely as we do. We all share one thing, our hearts were given from above. And the only thing worth fighting for in this world is love. On and on through the years, the war continues on. Why can't we see the truth? We are all one. I know you fight for God, and you believe it's right to risk your home, your life, to face the evil night. But in that darkest night, when our children are asleep, I think about the families of our enemies.